Welcome to the Backlash at Backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin, and in this video I'm going to read excerpts from my 1991 chapter on rape, Women as Property. Starting with second-wave feminist Susan Brownmiller's book, Against Our Will, feminists have been making several specious generalizations about rape, and so I wrote several chapters in my first book to address some of them. Here's the first of them. The full text with quotes and citations is linked below. Rape, Women as Property, 1991, Bellevue, Washington. One bad idea feminists promote is that men's abhorrence of rape begins with property ownership. This ignores the historical dynamics between women and men. In the past, to be eligible for marriage, men often had to prove themselves able to provide a wife with food and shelter. In a sense, a woman didn't marry a man, but his livelihood. In every essential respect, he was as much her property as she was his. It also demeans modern men. Historically, rape may have been about property, but that doesn't dictate what is presently true. Do most mothers consider their children chattel? Are kids no more than property to moms? Would torturing a woman's children be to her nothing more than vandalizing her property? And yet, in generations past, that's what children were. People had children to support them in their old age. So, children were like property. But that doesn't dictate how it is with people today. So, it's not about property, nor is rape of a man's wife mere defilement of a valued possession. The conduit of his love may be occluded by his anguished, "I should have been there to defend her" shame. But no matter what the reasons individual men may have for wishing no harm for their wives, one thing is very clear: that most men feel almost as much concern for the safety of most women as they do for their own mothers, wives, and sisters. When feminists disparage this genuine concern, they do more than harm men, they hurt women too. When the bonds of love are severed by cutthroat commentators, what's left? For men today, it's quickly becoming a matter of self-preservation. Nowhere is this so evident as in the discussions over date rape and responsibility. What if your date tells you she wants to have sex with you? Then when you're in bed about to do it, she says no. If you keep going, is it rape? What if you're already humping away and she says, "I've changed my mind, stop," seconds before you orgasm? If you orgasm, is it rape? The best answer in every case is assume, yes, it is. Get the hell out of there, warn all your friends that she's a rape waiting to happen, and never have anything to do with her again. Always take no for an answer. The less you have to do with women who play such games, the better. Isn't this being paranoid? Yes. And most men have good reason to be paranoid. Feminists are teaching most women, and college students in particular, that even reluctant sex is rape. Even though most accusations of rape are dropped, a false charge can destroy a man's career, ruin his reputation, and leave his life in shambles. What do feminists have to say about that? A woman who levels false charges of rape has her reasons. When is it rape, and when is it something else? Susan Brownmiller argues that rape is a crime of violence and power over women rather than a sex crime. Quote, "It is nothing more or less than a conscious process of intimidation by which all men keep all women in a state of fear," close quote. That was Susan Brownmiller in Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape. We should welcome such a broad definition since it allows us to look beyond the limited idea of rape as a crime committed only by men against women. Realistically, rape is an obsolete term that should be replaced with a non-gender specific term such as sexual violence. Indirectly, feminists even admit the whole concept of rape has as much to do with subjective social attitudes as with any objective characteristics of the crime. Quote, "Men can never be raped by women in the same way a woman can be raped by a man, or a man can be by another man, since cultural symbols do not allow female sexual aggression to be humiliating to a man," close quote. That was Cher Haidt in the Haidt Report on Male Sexuality. If rape wholly depends upon what kinds of sexual aggression cultural symbols cause to be humiliating, then women are raping men at breakneck speed. By their own logic, every woman who has ever sneered at and spurned a nerd's request for a dance or a date is guilty of rape. Every time a woman fakes orgasm, she rapes. And every woman who has ever scorned a man's sexual performance has raped, because most men find these forms of female sexual cruelty both hurtful and humiliating. Despite this, feminists cling to their anachronistic concept like crusaders of old, swashing their bucklers because, without the means to deny the definition that men can be sexually victimized by women, they would lose the primary basis upon which they persecute men. Consequently, they cannot accept that rape sometimes results from an overly excited libido. Rape or sexual violence is not always about sex, but women who assert it's never about sex just don't get it. But when rape isn't about sex, it can be, as Brownmiller argues, quote, a deliberate, hostile, violent act of degradation and possession on the part of a would-be conqueror designed to intimidate and inspire fear, close quote. So if it's not about sex but power and control, then clearly millions of women are guilty of raping men. This is a crime feminists encourage and perpetuate. They are successfully using rape and many other feminist issues, for example, as a conscious process of intimidation by which all women are putting all men in a state of fear, by terrorizing men with the threat of being accused of rape, sex discrimination, a sexual thought, or sexual harassment for any act that the victim may believe or say occurred. By feminist definition, men are guilty, period. Quote, all men are rapists, that's all they are, close quote, wrote Marilyn French in The Women's Room. The corollary to this, which most rightly ridicule, is, quote, all women want to be raped, close quote. Presuming a universal perversity among men is acceptable to many, but Brownmiller asserts our adherence to this absurd notion of human sexuality is in men's best interests. Quote, there's a good reason for men to hold tenaciously to the notion that all women want to be raped, because rape is an act that men do in the name of their masculinity. It is in their best interests to believe that women also want rape done in the name of their femininity. Close quote. The problem with this is the two go hand in hand. If all men are rapists, then all women want to be raped. They are inseparable propositions, each lending life and logic to the other. Every time a feminist denounces all men as rapists or as potential rapists, she also brands women as real or potential masochistic matrons of perfidiousness. They do try, however, to obscure the connection by assiduously asserting the former while vehemently denying the latter. It is in their best interest to sell the idea all men are potential rapists. Until recently, rape was defined as a crime no woman could commit. Quote, rape is the only crime in which by law the victim is female and the offender is male, close quote. This ignores that women can be guilty of statutory rape, have sex with anyone too young, and male or female, the act is, by law, rape. In this context, women can be rapists too, but are they likely to be charged with rape? Rarely, because to quote Mick Hunter, quote, our society mistakenly believes that girls get raped and hate it, but boys are seduced and love it. Close quote. Why is a girl a victim but a boy is lucky? Because no less than the men whom they accuse of sexism, women objectify themselves as sex objects. Thinking in terms of supply and demand, they see themselves as suppliers of sex and men as consumers. Thus, a boy who is given sex to consume is lucky, while a girl who gives of her supply is, by sexist logic, a victim of theft. Objectified by her own gender, her pleasure is made a commodity she must hang on to in exchange for power over men. For this reason, as suppliers of sex, all women are subject to victimization, while all men as consumers of sex are like thieves in the night whom feminists prejudge guilty by virtue of being men. This is particularly evident in Brownmiller's assessment of the predicament of groupies who find themselves, coerced into giving away their sex. Quote, the glamour attached to cultural heroes, such as a movie star, sports figure, rock singer, or respected man in the community, provides a psychological edge that lessens the need for psychological coercion until it's too late for the victim to recognize her predicament, close quote. That was Brownmiller's Against Our Will. Personifying men as success objects, these frequently young women pursue the attention of rich, powerful, sometimes famous walking wallets with a fervor matched only by some young men's pursuit of sexually objectified women. Recognizing the sexual power these men have, Brownmiller labels them rapists who operate within an emotional setting or within a dependent relationship that provides a hierarchical, authoritarian structure of its own that weakens a victim's resistance, distorts her perspective, and confounds her will. As most men can confirm, an attractive woman has an almost identical effect on men. Does that mean all attractive women are rapists? If a man's career success makes him a rapist because it gives him a sexual edge, then shouldn't the same be true of a woman whose carnal success gives her a competitive edge of her own? Just who are the real victims here? Feminists assert most women are victims of rape, that it is both common and underreported. In Great Britain, the 1984 Women's Safety Survey concluded 1 in 6 women had been raped. In the United States, Brownmiller asserted that 1 in 5 female rapes, or possibly 1 in 20, may actually be reported. Their numbers may be true when we take into account all the sexual assaults by women that go underreported or unreported. Do women sexually violate men as often as men sexually violate women? Not according to police statistics, but do those numbers accurately portray reality? Probably not. Most cases of reported spouse battering, for example, involve a man attacking a woman. Yet surveys conducted independently of reported cases, that is, police records, show that in 1975, 5 husbands were battered for every 4 battered wives. 10 years later, that increased to more than 7 battered husbands for every 4 battered wives. Despite this, police statistics show between 12 and 14 cases of wife battering are reported for every case of husband battering. In other words, only 1 case out of between 17 and 20 occurrences of husband battering is reported. If this ratio holds true with rape, then it's possible that in 1985, perhaps 1 in 3 men were raped, but only 1 in 29 were reported. This is not as far-fetched as it may sound. Statutory rapes of male victims are seldom reported. What's more, the 1991 study suggesting a new category of rape defined by reluctant consent found that more male than female college students said they had engaged in sexual intercourse when they really didn't want to. If reluctant consent, sorry, I've got a cold and I'm having trouble pronouncing words. If reluctant consent sex is rape, then the rape of men may be the most underreported crime of all. But all of this begs the question if men cannot, by definition, be victims of rape. Now, unlike Diana Davison, I doubt I could get away with telling rape jokes. But did you hear about the feminist who invented a new type of engine? No? Well, that's because the only thing feminists invent are new ways to blame and shame to control men. That's all for now. Check out the other videos. Subscribe to the channel. For the Backlash at backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mecklin.